Welcome to the Bay Insider with Amanda and Ying, where we talk about history, lifestyle, and real estate in the San Francisco Bay Area. All right, today we're going to talk about Noe Valley, and I'm really excited because I've got Ying with me, my usual partner in crime, and my mom, who's our special guest, Pam Gill, who has been living in the neighborhood for 58 years, right?
Right.
That's a long time.
Yeah. So, we have a lot of history. I grew up in this neighborhood and lived here for 20 years before I moved to Bernal Heights. First, kind of to orient people, anybody who's not familiar with the neighborhood, Noe Valley is pretty much the geographical center of the city. So if you're looking at a map of San Francisco, put your finger right in the middle, and that's where we are. If you look at kind of the neighborhoods that border Noe Valley, to the east, you have the Mission District. To the south, you have Bernal Heights and Glen Park. And in the north, you have Castro, also known as Eureka Valley. And then on the west, it's Diamond Heights. So that's kind of getting you situated there in the neighborhood. And it's got a long history, this neighborhood. It's gone through many different changes. Jose de Jesus Noe was the last Mexican mayor of the Yerba Buena. Are you familiar with him?
I've heard his name, yeah.
He sold Noe and Eureka Valley to a Mormon immigrant named John Mayer Horner in 1854. This whole area is called Horner's Addition. It was part of Rancho San Miguel, which is the whole area that kind of encompassed Noe, Eureka Valley. When I was researching this, I learned a couple of things that I didn't know. Elizabeth Street was named after Horner's wife, and 24th Street was once named Park Street. Did you know that?
No.
Well, see, now you learned something new, too.
And there was a Temple Street, too, right?
Yeah, 25th Street, which is the street that we're sitting on right now and that I grew up on. So that was Temple Street. Those were honoring his religion. The only one that remains now is Elizabeth Street, which we all know is right there on the other side of 24th Street. The oldest buildings in all of the Rancho San Miguel area are found in Noe Valley. And starting in 1871 is kind of when they started building the houses in this area. But most were 1880 and beyond. A lot of Irish immigrants came fleeing the Great Potato Famine.
I have a question.
Yeah,
what's the Great Potato Famine?
The Great Potato Famine, that's in Ireland when they
Darling.
Yeah.
Really?
Tell her about the Great Potato Famine.
What does that have anything to do with potato?
They ate potatoes.
That's what
suddenly the potatoes had rot in them. And furthermore, they couldn't get enough potatoes. They were living.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe they didn't have potatoes.
They had potatoes, but they got some kind of blight. And then besides that, everybody was going hungry, including England was just sweeping food out of Ireland. So there wasn't enough food for the Irish. And they immigrated and they died also. Some died of starvation and some came to this country or other countries. Irish have had to travel many times because of things around of their economy.
Is that a time a lot of them migrate to San Francisco? Because we have a huge Irish population here.
Yeah, a lot of them went to Boston. And then Boston had a stricter kind of Catholic organization. And I think that people who were Irish in Boston tended to decide if it was too tightly run for their taste, they'd go to San Francisco, where it's a little more liberal.
I see.
And that was my experience. But people were looking for work, basically.
Okay.
And there was a lot of animosity between the Italians and the Irish. And when I was on this block, I was told, I didn't experience it, but the prejudice against one another was very strong, and they would throw like eggs at your front steps and things like that. If you were Italian and they were Irish or vice versa, there was this, prejudice.
That is interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Competition for jobs. A lot of it was,
Wow.
There was a guy living across the street. If anybody was speaking Spanish on the street, kids in a car coming by or something, he'd run out and say, "Go back to the mission. You don't belong here." It was mortifying. It was horrible. very overt.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
I'm Chinese, so I get that a lot. But I guess we are the later comers, after the Irish.
These were here in the 1800s too. I mean,
Yeah,
they built the railroad across the country.
That's right.
sure you've seen many times in the recorded documents in different neighborhoods on the preliminary title report
Yeah.
throughout the city, all the restrictions against anybody,
Of
Black,
color.
Chinese, anybody of
Yeah.
color going into the neighborhood. I don't think Irish was in those documents, but there's certainly
I'm sure there were
at some
official
point. Yeah.
regulations against the Irish
Yeah.
in some places in this country for periods of time.
That is so interesting.
But yeah, and Noe Valley was very much, I would say, predominantly an Irish blue collar working neighborhood, wouldn't you say? In the 70s?
Absolutely, with very large families.
Right. So
Houses
this house,
had
talk
like
about
8, 9, 10 kids. Moved in, like the people that owned
1972, right?
well, more like 72. That's good. They had a bunch of kids down there. A woman lived here and had like 8 kids, 6 of whom were boys and lived in the attic in 3 bunk beds.
Okay.
And there's only a ladder to get up to the attic. and then nobody died, But she had lived here for many years and ended up on welfare and had to pay rent in various chunks that she could get together, not just every first of the month. And they were very poor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was the case in a lot of these older buildings. There were many, many families living together. And it's so funny now when you hear people, it doesn't have a bathroom, it's not an ensuite bedroom. It's like such a departure.
People would have a toilet in the back porch that was just sitting there,
Yeah, that was like part of one of those slanted areas.
Porches,
a covered porch.
But, it's just interesting because now we talk about Noe Valley. We say it's such a fancy area, hip area. Everyone wants to live in Noe Valley. Then what I was reading said, it was a working class neighborhood. All the houses were built as row houses. But the beautiful Victorians.
Well, they don't build things like they used to.
But back then, they were supposed to be cheap houses.
There were. For 20 or 30,000, when I bought this house, you could get a house in Noe Valley. It wouldn't be this big necessarily. This was a little more than that, but not much. And that's the way it was. And there were empty houses.
Okay.
It appeared to be abandoned. Sometimes there were squatters.
Wow.
They'd come through a window or, garage area and then just stay there for a while.
So that has been happening all this time. It's not a new thing, huh?
And, well, there must have been ups and downs. And certainly most of this neighborhood was here in some form or other by the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
After the earthquake. This house went through the earthquake. But I was also told by people that do the tour of Noe Valley, which is very interesting, that after people ran to the Golden Gate Park because it seemed the safest place to be if there were going to be more earthquakes, right?
Yeah.
And they built these little earthquake houses that as soon as they started getting prepared to move out of it, they wanted to move to Noe Valley because it was obvious that we were on more solid ground.
Yeah, what everybody refers to as bedrock, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So there was a lot of competition at that point to get a place in Noe Valley.
Can see that.
Yeah, after 1906, a lot of the southern neighborhoods of San Francisco saw a huge influx of people, but definitely Noe Valley. There were a lot of vegetable and dairy farms in the area that then started turning into residential lots. And Noe Valley's gone through many different iterations. I would say, like in the 1980s, you started seeing a wave of gentrification start happening. And then there was the dot-com boom of the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And now people refer to Noe Valley as Stroller Valley. And it's a lot of young families, tech people, it's a booming area, which brings us into the architecture of what's been happening. So you were talking about the row houses and the Victorians and things that started being built, in kind of turn of the century. And then now when you look at Noe Valley, you see a lot of that still and some that's in various stages of disrepair, mostly in the process of being upgraded because the land is worth so much here now. But you also see the big, huge modern buildings, right? So they've made these gigantic, 3,000-4,000 square foot, very modern properties, which is kind of an interesting
contrast. Very interesting contrast. And you have the $6-7 million or $10 million brand new houses with open floor plan, open to the deck, to the yard.
Mhm.
They're all very nice, but they're all very similar versus the traditional Noe Valley Victorian Edwardian architecture that we have.
And it's so interesting. I think, Victorian architecture kind of gave way to that huge open floor plan feel that everybody was looking for. And then when the pandemic came, everybody didn't want to have 100% open floor plan because they couldn't get away from their family, especially people who had teenagers. It was like, I need a room where I can close the door and get away from my family. So it's interesting how that's kind of changed over time.
And I think going back to when a lot of these houses were built, because in many ways, the neighborhood does look like it looked in about 1910.
Yeah, it hasn't changed too much.
Growing up, but I think tons of men knew how to build. They learned from their dads and their grandfathers and probably I'm sure there were women working too. And so they'd do 3 or 4 houses.
Okay.
Your brother lives here and aunt lives there. And they would be similar. You can see how they're very similar, but that they were doing their own labor. A lot of it was just, we're building a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And they were built with redwood.
Yes.
Which is such a
rare thing, right?
Don't get it.
Old growth. That's the other thing. It wasn't new redwood. I mean, it was really old growth.
It didn't have knots in it. It didn't rot. It didn't burn. It was,
Yeah, and that's why
we'll never get that again.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
That's why we have houses that are hundreds of years old that don't have a whole lot of pest damage. When you go through and look at reports, there's powder post beetles, there's termites, there's all these kinds of things, but the damage extent is much less than you see in other areas where they're building with other types of wood, where they can just decimate those.
That's
buildings.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's very resistant to that. Okay, so moving on from architecture and history to the parks and open spaces and arts and things like that of the neighborhood. There's a lot of great things about this neighborhood that have evolved and changed over time. The Noe Valley Town Square is a really cool addition. I wanted to kind of fact check myself with you, Mom, because I know that you were at an age where you have a better memory of this, but my memory is that the space where the town square used to be Dan's gas station.
Yeah.
A million years ago.
It was a gas station. And you could roll in there and say, my tire is flat, and they'd fix it. They'd try and do anything that you needed. It was a nice place. It was a friendly place.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other gas stations.
Right, which we definitely don't have.
I remember 3 gas stations on 24th Street. One was up I think on Douglas and 24th, and one was down a little ways. But, people wanted gas when it was here.
People need gas. Where do people go now?
Right, hardly any places.
On the main thoroughfares, you go to South Vienna, you go to 19th Avenue.
Oh, Portola.
Yeah, when you're getting, on those main thoroughfares. But when did Dan's close down?
Probably the 80s. His wife had died at some point. I mean, I know some personal information about him, so I won't go into that. But
just in case.
He donated that piece of property.
Did he donate it to the ministry?
That's my understanding. Something like that. And then the ministry sold it.
So there's the
money to fix up the church.
The Noe Valley Ministry, which is on Sanchez Street, right? Just by Elizabeth and Sanchez. Right?
Yeah.
And that's been around forever. I went to preschool there for a while,
right?
Yeah.
Almost 50 some years ago.
But the Noe Valley Ministry was like a great gathering place for the neighborhood. It probably still
had
is.
a large relation of some, I don't even know the denomination, but very active church. They're gone. And then the Noe Valley Preschool.
Yeah.
With Nina Zimple, who also was called Nina Yokelson.
Yeah, she was a big fixture in the neighborhood.
She was
for
a
long
big
time.
fixture in the neighborhood. She was
knew all the kids in the neighborhood.
she knew everybody, and was sometimes called the mayor of Noe Valley. But more than that, she could tell wonderful stories. Her background was Russian, and she never touched a computer.
Okay.
She didn't die that long ago. She just no, I'm not doing computers or cell phones. Period.
But I remember the space within the Noe Valley Ministry in
Okay.
preschool time. We would just put on roller skates and we just roller skate around in the inside in circles.
Right.
So like it was a roller skating rink.
They had a swing in there,
Yeah.
and then they had a swing outside.
It was a fun place. But getting back to the reason I mentioned it to begin with was that you're saying, Dan, it sounds like he donated it to the ministry. The
That's my
ministry
understanding.
then sold it, and then it sat empty for a very long time while everybody tried to get permits or figure out what they were going to do with it. So it was a parking lot for a while. And
It was, I think.
Yeah.
Before the town square.
and then it was the town square, which I think was 2016.
2016 is what I remember.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's not.
yeah.
It's
Well, that's
not-
almost 10 years ago. That's 8
That's
years ago.
true. Yeah, that's true.
So they made the town square, which now has seating. They have events. They have music on Saturdays. The farmers market, which is amazing. And they finally just got the toilet. And so the toilet is a whole controversy. We'll put some links in the show notes so people can dig into that a little bit more. But it got on Bill Maher's show. It got on national news. How many millions of dollars were they talking
Well, it
about
was, I think, $1.5 million. They were
for a toilet?
saying that's what it was going to cost, and everybody was up in arms. And I think it cost considerably less when they finally got done. But there were donations. Who knows what
Yeah.
all money was thrown around? But
So what did they do once they finally?
they fixed it up.
Yeah, and then did you go to the celebration and tell us about
did.
it?
Well, there was a guy dressed like a roll of toilet paper.
It was last month, right?
Yeah, it was just recently.
Yeah.
They had balloons shaped like poop, round balloons floating, and some yellow ones too.
And it was a toilet.
Kids were dancing. It was fun.
Was a toilet made of gold?
Oh, it's not made of gold.
Did you use the toilet?
No, I didn't.
Does it wash itself? Like, what does it do?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, maybe later we can walk over and try it out. So anyway, so that's the town square. They do lots of great stuff there. There's Noe's Courts, which is up the hill on Douglas and 24th Street, and they have tennis courts, they have basketball courts, they have a children's play area. It's kind of an unofficial dog park. I don't think you're really supposed to use it as a dog park, but many people do, right? Off leash to have their dogs running around. But it's a beloved place, and it's right there next to the Phil's Coffee. So it's kind of a cool little spot.
Well, and it used to be the gang park.
Oh yeah, tell us about the gang park.
The gang park was just, there were more trees, and it was kind of, sketchy.
Yeah, I remember it being sketchy from when I
it
was
was
younger.
kind of sketchy. We tell the kids, don't go to the gang park.
I would never have related that to.
And then if you go up further on Douglas, like up or over Noe towards Glen Park neighborhood, you hit Douglas Park, which I have a lot of great memories as a kid of that park. It basically has two different sections, right? You have Lower Douglas, which is kind of flat. It's got the children's park, big open field. It's got really cool slides that us kids love to go on. So that's kind of the kids area. People have birthday parties there. And then you have to go up that steep hill. I mean, it's like you're walking almost sideways and you get to Upper Douglas, which is one of the best dog parks in the city, if not the best, in my opinion. It's off leash, it's fenced in. They've got little hiking trails up on the ridge, and then also big, wide open field space as well.
I think that not unlike Gun Canyon, there's configurations of rocks that made it too difficult with the kind of technology they had at the time to build a house on. Things that would be too formidable. So they had to just leave it in there, thank heaven. It became a park over time. Because it's wild. It's really wild to be walking down the street and suddenly be with these big cliffs and these huge rocks.
But it's a great park. I love it. And I think it's well loved by a lot of people. And then you go further down towards the end of Church Street and you get to Upper Noe Rec Center, right? So that's like Sanchez and 30th pretty much, right? That has the playground, tennis courts, basketball courts. They have a lot of community events, parks and rec type stuff, yoga classes. There's a soccer field. They have
Baseball.
Baseball. And then they have the off-leash dog area there, which is a little bit of a smaller, more condensed spot, but very tightly knit kind of dog community at that dog park as well. And then if you're at that dog park, you can always go to the dog wash there with the like all-foot tubs that you can wash your dog in. It's very fancy.
Really?
It's Pet Bar. That's what it's
Oh,
called.
someone does it for you.
Well, you can get someone to do it for you. They have like a whole grooming thing, or
Okay.
you can just do it yourself.
Oh, nice.
And they have all kinds of different fancy facial wash for dogs. It's a pretty fancy, snazzy place. But they're very nice and they're
Oh.
super helpful. Lots of fancy treats for your dogs.
I always think it's for people. When I walk by, they have special vitamins, special grooming, things that I would like to have.
I feel that way too. Oh,
Yeah,
that's great.
I think some of the dogs in Noe Valley are probably treated better than
Better treated,
people.
right? So back to what we're talking about, Solar Valley, and we're saying Noe Valley probably has more dogs than children now, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there were. There's definitely, you're living here on a daily basis. Do you see equal dog-children
I don't
ratio?
know. That's a data I can't pull up. But
But lots of dogs,
there are
right?
a lot of dogs. And San Francisco is known as a dog rescue area, too. They,
Absolutely.
imported dogs from all kinds of crisis areas because many people will take pets.
We're
who
bleeding
want to
hearts
help
here
them.
in San Francisco.
Bleeding hearts. Even though there's a high percentage of children in this neighborhood, we have a very low percentage overall in the city of children.
After elementary school age,
Yeah.
especially.
Probably.
That for sure. So just going back to the parks, there's so many great, you walk all the time, Mom. I know that you have your ways that you go, and we walk to Kite Hill and walking up and over kind of by Diamond Heights.
Grand Canyon.
There's so many great kind of circle walks to do. And then Sanchez Street, which is a slow street, right? That those kind of started around the pandemic time. They proliferated throughout the city. This is the most successful one, I would say, in the entire
It's
city.
wonderful. Everybody loves it that I know and has fought to keep it.
Yeah, so
I
it
think
goes
it's pretty
basically
permanent for the time being.
from 24th Street to 30th on Sanchez, correct?
No, it even goes above that.
Oh, does it? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the most used portion, I
Right,
would say,
definitely.
is like 24th Street to 30th. And you see people biking, walking their dogs, rolling, strolling, whatever. It's and there's the Noe Cafe that's right there on Upper and Sanchez, maybe.
I think it's the next block, 26.
On that, yeah. It used to be a laundromat, which I can't
Yeah.
remember the name of it.
No,
And she built just a tiny little kiosk within the laundromat to sell
Yeah.
coffee. And it was just a small thing. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then now she's taken over the entire property, and it's a very successful kind of community gathering place with good, yummy things to eat and drink. Okay. So moving on to the arts. I love Amos Goldbaum, who's the artist who does line drawings of the city, and you can get his T-shirts and bags and stuff. And we, when we talk about Glen Park, we talk about the mural that I helped get done there. But I think his first San Francisco mural was the one on Day Street and 30th in Noe Valley. So there's like a Noe Valley neighborhood scape, like houses lined.
houses on hillsides.
Yeah, houses on hillsides that's there on the side of the building. Then there's other murals in Noe Valley. You've got the farmers market mural that's there at the town square. There's one in the parking lot by the Noe Valley Bakery. And you might know of any other kind of interesting art related things in
Well,
Noe
there's a
Valley.
lovely mural coming down Church Street around 22nd, or
Yeah, is that the one that's on the side of
it
the...
goes on two sides of a corner. It goes
Yeah.
up the hill and it goes.
That's where the
Church.
public preschool is, I think, in that
Oh,
building.
okay.
Okay. I gotta go check it out.
Teresa Mailer, I think that is. Anyways, yeah. And then there's the art house place on 24th Street between Noe and Sanchez that has art classes for adults and kids and some summer camps that you can sign up for in terms of art stuff. Just for Fun on 24th and Noe is a great place to get supplies and all kinds of interesting things. And then Lola's Art Gallery, which you know Lola up at the corner.
Yes.
She has her art gallery, if you want to say anything about that.
Well, she's a delightful person, and she sews her own clothes. We always think of clothes being sewn in other countries or something, but more and more San Francisco has people that are actually designing and sewing fashion, and she's one of them. But she has a lot of other interesting things that she finds. She has an eclectic taste.
And she's on Flipper in Sanchez.
Yes, she is.
Right.
And she has an art gallery.
She periodically shows art, well, pretty steadily. She'll have somebody put up their artwork
Okay,
for these 3 weeks or these 3 months,
I see.
and they'll have an opening, and you can buy them
Oh.
there.
And then she has her own clothes that she makes that are kind
Okay.
of like artwork.
That's
Right.
interesting.
She's sitting there sewing,
Yep.
literally, in the store.
Nice.
Yeah. And then just wanted to speak quickly to the library, because I know that's a very important thing to you, Mom, that's over on Jersey Street.
That's wonderful.
Tell us about why you like the
Well,
library.
it's an old Carnegie library, and at some point, we had a mayor named Art Agnos who said he was closing a number of branch libraries, which people have tried to do in the city, but they seem to always lose because San Francisco's population loves libraries and are willing to vote for them. So Art Agnos announced to the paper that they'd be closing, I think it was 5 different branches, almost overnight. And the neighborhood just rose up in horror. And we sat on 24th Street and leafleted everybody, we got to stop this, we got to stop this. So they demanded that Art Agnos come to the library and speak with the neighborhood.
Okay.
And when he did come, the library was so crowded he could hardly get in. I mean, it was just packed with everybody. And they said, don't take our library. You can't take our library. And they didn't. They
And
had
what
to
year was
stop.
that?
I think it was 1988.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was, you don't always see good examples of democracy in action.
Right.
But this was definitely a democratic movement that said, stop.
Huh.
We're not going to help you. It's not okay.
And it's amazing to see how the neighborhood came together for something
Yes.
they truly care about, right?
Yes.
So that's good. And then, Noe Valley has so many businesses. Like, we can't list out all the businesses that there are in this neighborhood, but just to kind of go through a few as quickly as we can. The restaurants I really like and that I think are very special in Noe Valley, like Firefly, which has been around for about 25 years. It's on 24th Street near Diamond. And they have really unique foods. It's kind of farm to table. Some of the best scallops I ever had in my life I had from there. Their menu is very small and it changes often. It's a nice, cute, intimate spot. Then there's Hamano Sushi, which is on Castro near Jersey. I think it's probably under new ownership now than it was, but it's been around for at least 30 years in that spot. And I remember when I used to work at Noe's Bar and Grill, the bar over there, when I was, 21 years old or something. Every day when I was working, I would order the gomo ai, which is, it's a cold spinach with sesame seeds and like a peanut sauce. And that was my go-to thing. That and hamachi sashimi, delicious. There's also Saro Sushi, which a lot of people love. That's down on 24th Street. The newest addition is Todo El Dia. And that is from the Tacolicious folks. I don't know if you guys have been there, but I haven't been to Todo El Dia yet. I'm excited to go.
I have.
You have? Tell me.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah? What did you have?
Their lunch, they have a nice patio that's interestingly designed. I had some soup
Okay.
and some of their blue tortillas.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have a lot. And my friend had some kind of spicy shrimp.
Okay.
She said it was delicious.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because these guys, they own the place on Valencia Street. They have one over in the marina as well. I have so many great memories going to the place on Valencia Street, for dinners out with friends. And it's just a fun place with really good, solid food. This one, I think they're doing special coffee stuff in the morning and some breakfast tacos.
Okay.
And then moving into the night and doing like some brewery type thing. So it's kind of interesting.
Is Tacolicious the same as the Underdog Tacolicious? Because I know the owner of that. I thought it was a different chain.
Well, Tacolicious, I don't know if they're part of Underdog.
It's different, huh?
I don't know. You could be totally right. But I know Tacolicious has the Valencia Street. Now they have this Todo El Dia here in Noe Valley and then also in the marina.
Yeah, they seem very friendly too, the staff there.
As a matter of fact, they even have a stand at Chase Stadium.
Okay. I gotta check it out. Well, I know the owner, but I'm trying to figure out whether it's the same chain or not.
Okay, well, we'll have to go back and figure that one
I
out.
don't eat enough tacos to know.
And then there's Noe, which is the Greek restaurant
Right.
that is right on Noe and 24th Street. It's run by the great-granddaughters of the original owners of the Greek restaurant Panos, which was there in that location starting back in the 70s. And I remember going there.
Yeah,
as
we
a
ate there
kid.
the first night they opened.
Really?
You and I did. You were a little girl.
It was the first night they opened? What year?
Which
Do you
year?
remember?
Well, you were probably 6 or 8, you know.
Okay, so
Well,
that's 1980. They said it was around since the 70s, so I don't know. Well, we might
Well,
have to fact
we
check
won't
this
go
visit.
into-
Maybe I'm younger than I think I am, or older than I think I am. Anyways, the Panos Greek restaurant, I loved that place, and I still think about the homemade pita that they did there. They would
Okay.
serve it to you with your meal, and it was just
Warm.
so pillowy and warm and delicious. Put a little butter on that. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Sounds great.
And then the Highway Burger and Fry, which is that Sanchez and 24th, I think. I don't know how long that's been there, maybe less than 10 years, something like that. It's a great place to take kids. They've got good, solid food at reasonable prices. It's pretty casual Chinese food. There's Eric's and Alice's, which a lot of people always thought they were part of the same ownership, which I don't think that they are. I don't think they have
Really?
anything to do with each other. Maybe they do. But I don't think so. And there's a lot of people who have their favorites because they've both been there for a very long time.
Right.
And those are both in Upper Noe, like down by Sanchez and 29th and Church and right around that same area. My favorite is Alice's. But do you have a favorite between Eric's and Alice?
Alice.
I used to love their
What's your favorite?
mushu vegetable. Gosh, pancakes that they make for the mushu vegetable are, again, like soft and pillowy. Maybe I like
Fresh.
that. Yeah, fresh. Sometimes you go to a restaurant and you get the mushu and the pancakes kind of feel like almost crunchy or they're too. These are perfect. So yeah, highly recommended. I think they had mispriced the beers that they had there. It was some kind of Belgian beer.
Okay.
And at the store cost like $2 more than it did at the restaurant. So I'd go there with Colin and we'd get our mushu vegetable and
What's a beer?
have our cheap beer. Anyway, they probably caught on to that eventually. There's Uma Casa, which is down in the Upper Noe place too. That's a Portuguese restaurant that has some outdoor seating too. La Ciccia, which is a very unique Sardinian Italian restaurant right at 30th and Church. It's been written up a million times. And Ying, weren't you telling me an interesting story about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that place is well known. I heard a lot about it. Everyone love it. I just haven't been there. I think the story was the place was up for sale and the deal fell through and the real estate broker ended up buying it. And that was recently.
Okay, and so she's the one running it now.
I believe so. I
Wow.
believe so. We need to go there and check it
Well,
out.
thank you to her for doing that because you don't want that business to disappear. I would have eaten there more, but I'm not a huge seafood person. And
Is it
really,
seafood?
it's
Okay.
a lot of like octopus and squid
Oh,
ink
I
and
haven't
things
thought
like
of
that.
that.
Oh, you would love it.
Oh, that's my favorite type of food.
You should go there because it's
I go.
very unique. There aren't a lot of restaurants that do exactly the same type
Yeah.
of thing. And when I ate there, I did find that the food really tasted very fine and good and like
Okay.
precise flavors. It was very good.
All right.
We went there for Joe's 75th birthday.
Okay. And this
So
is
that's
Joe,
about
who's now
20 years
93.
ago.
Oh my gosh.
And he ordered some kind of spaghetti thing that was
Yeah.
Sardinian, and then he wanted some Parmesan cheese. And the waiter said, no.
No. Yeah, I was going to say.
You don't put Parmesan cheese on.
I'll
it.
see
He
you
was
pasta.
offensive. And we said, but this is his 75th birthday, and he would like some Parmesan cheese. He said, no.
On the
We said,
side.
well, the truth is, even though you would like it better without it, he would like it better with the Parmesan cheese. So probably we're guessing that somewhere in that kitchen, you have some Parmesan cheese. Would you mind taking a look and seeing if you could find it? He was definitely disturbed, but he did turn up later.
He did produce the
He
Parmesan
used the
cheese.
Parmesan cheese for Joe. So
So despite Joe's terrible taste in having Parmesan cheese on a dish that shouldn't have had it, he
Right.
got it.
He was happy.
I've heard if you have seafood pasta, seafood spaghetti, you cannot add Parmesan cheese.
Okay.
That's a rule. And
Well,
but I'm not sure.
now he's done it,
It's
and
like
guess
putting
what?
ketchup on your, I don't know.
And guess what?
Steak.
He's now 93 years old and he survived Parmesan cheese. There you have it. One place I can't forget to mention is the Haystack Pizza restaurant,
Been
which
there forever.
has been there at least 50 years. Because I'm 50 years. It's true. It was there before I was born. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was reading 1972 or something. At any rate, it's been there forever. It's got old school decor. I haven't been in there recently, so I don't know how much of that they've gotten rid of.
I don't think they got rid of any of it.
But it was, cool old style booths and like wagon wheel stuff. And I remember they behind the bar had one of those Coors Light lit up things that looks like a river going. It's kind of like a motorized picture that changes.
Okay.
And I used to just stare at it while we were waiting for our food. Anyways,
Uh-huh.
It's a cool place. And they have a antipasta salad. I've never really liked meat, but this antipasta salad has tons of different meats, like 4 different meats piled in it, and like 4 different cheeses piled in it.
But you
so
like
much.
it. But you like
Well,
it.
no, I'd buy it, and I liked it so much with the cheeses. I would take all the meats and take the meats out,
What?
and then I would eat it with the cheeses.
No, see, another thing about Noe Valley, or when I think about all the business along 24th, is it changed a lot. A lot of them, the turnover rates seem to be really, really high. Back in the day, my office was on 24th Street. Both of us were in the same office, right?
Mhm.
And the neighborhood restaurants I remembered are different from the ones I see today. That was probably 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, so there's a lot of them that have changed, but if you notice, a lot of the ones I mentioned also have been there for a long time. So
Correct.
there's some kind of anchor places that remain, but yeah, there's a lot of turnover there's a lot of storefronts.
Yeah, that's true. Real food finally.
Oh, I used to love Real Foods. Now it's like skin, it's some sort
Skincare,
of
cosmetic,
Very
right?
upscale, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of that. I forgot. Real Food was my favorite. It was right across the street from Bell Supermarket,
health
which is
food.
now
Grocery.
Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And
Grocery store.
there's lots of places still to get groceries, though, because you do have the Whole Foods. You have the church produce at
Okay.
30th and Church. They have great prices, right, on produce and bulk items and things like that. And then on 26th and Guerrero used to be like a little grocery store. Is it still there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that place. I should remember what it's called.
Yeah.
But the Butcher down on Church Street used to be Drew's, which had been there for 100 years as
Okay.
a butcher. And then when they were, they had to sell the business, and it was really kind of an emotional thing. And, nobody wanted to go away, but Barron's Butcher took over. So now there's
Nice.
still a butcher there. And they have good seafood and meats and things like
I
that.
like those butcher shops. They're so much better than some other big stores.
Yeah, well, everything's so consolidated these days, but it's
Yeah.
nice because you can go and, get specialized things. You can go to the butcher there, walk down the street, go to the Church Street produce to get the other ingredients that you need, and you're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know you
I remember I think there were 3 butcher shops right on 24th Street.
No, 3?
the meat market before it was a coffee shop. Was that
Yeah,
it
and
was a
then
butcher.
another one turned into Acme Metal Spinning Work. Because
Makes
people
sense.
we didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones. And you would go sit in a coffee house and talk with your friends for as long as, nobody would boost you out. That was good. And Hopwell's was where many restaurants have gone through, but they'd been there for a
Is
long,
that where
long time.
Pancake Boy is now?
Yeah, where the Pancake Boy is.
Yeah.
I think.
Hopwell's. Well, I remember Hopwell's is like a greasy spoon restaurant. And I remember you gave me, for Father's Day, I think it was, or my dad's birthday, you gave me a $20 bill to take him out to breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the breakfast was like, I don't know, $5.50 for the 2 of us.
Okay.
Something like that. And I just left them the rest of the money as a tip.
Oh, nice.
And you were like just incensed. Because you had given me this $20 bill.
That's okay.
Anyways, that was
Remember.
funny.
And there's another new place I'm dying to try. It's called Damon's.
I've heard of that, but I haven't.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that one?
It's a Malaysian restaurant. and it's on Church in the 30s, roughly there.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yes.
It's supposed to be good.
It's supposed to be good.
Yeah.
I'm just dying to find a true Malaysian restaurant somewhere.
There, it
else.
sounds like you found it.
Well, let me test that. I'll tell you whether it's true or not.
There's a new dumpling restaurant too.
Oh, yeah?
That's a different one.
Oh, no.
But there are two
Okay.
there. The
There's
one's a
another one.
dumpling restaurant where there used to be incredible woodworks. It was called the Woodworks at one point
Okay.
because somebody spent, I don't know how much time just cutting wood and doing like patchwork on the ceiling and the walls. Wood.
Wait, are you talking about where Tian Fu
Woodworks.
used to be?
Yeah, tin food.
Which also used to be a morgue before that. And I worked there. I worked as a bartender, really pretty much every bar on 24th Street. I worked at the Noe Bar and Grill. I worked at the Tian Fu, the Chinese restaurant bar.
Okay.
I worked one day at the Dubliner, one day at the Rover.
That's very short.
I worked at the Peaks for like 1 or 2 days. I was just sitting in for people. It wasn't like,
Okay.
because they knew I was a bartender in the neighborhood. And I worked at the Rat and Rave for the longest period of time. But at any rate, going back to Tian Fu, the Chinese restaurant, which was the Woodworks, which was the morgue. So, yeah. So now it's what?
Dumpling place.
It's the dumpling place. Dumpling place. Okay, good to know. All right. So then, and then there's a bunch of bakeries in Noe Valley. You have Viva La Tarte, which is the super fancy bakery. It's got some really great croissants, very flaky French style. That's between Castro and Noe. And then across the street is the Noe Valley Bakery,
Of
which
course.
is like, that is just the most delicious kind of quintessential Noe Valley Bakery. People wait in line many times. Every day you could pretty much see some kind of line there. And they have these mini cupcakes that they do, a bunch of different flavors. I oftentimes, for my open houses, I will get like a platter of those cupcakes because it's just like a bite-sized thing and kind of fun for people who come around to snack on or give to their kids to get them crazy. And Happy Donuts is on, which is on Church and 24th and has been there forever. And I remember you, Mom, telling me when I was younger not to go around there because that was a dangerous place and dangerous people hang out there. And I think probably because it was a 24-hour donut shop, maybe that was the feeling. But I always remember like, stay away from Happy Donuts.
It's just funny.
Or maybe you didn't want to be eating donuts.
The sound of it. Just stay away from donut shop.
Yeah.
What?
Danger.
It was open 24 hours a day. So
Yeah. So it's dangerous.
that was
in that way.
unusual.
And then if we're talking about sweets, I can't forget to talk about Mitchell's ice cream, which is right there on 29th and San Jose. It's kind of right on the border of the Mission and Glen Park and Noe Valley. But they've been around since 1953, so pretty similar to our brokerage. They started up at the same time. And it's still family owned. People, again, wait there too. They have like one of those ticket number things. And on a hot day, it can take forever to get in there. But they have special flavors like ube and coconut. And then they have, all the regular flavors and unique stuff. But I was reading a little bit more about them. And it's kind of interesting. They moved to San Francisco in 1865. And they had a small dairy farm in the hills above Noe Valley. And then I guess the husband ran the farm until the late 1890s. And then he had an untimely death and left his wife to raise 8 children on her own. So she leased the land to another farmer. And then they had a 3-story building on the corner of 29th and San Jose, which is the building that now houses the ice cream shop. And when they went to widen the road, right, for more cars to be able to get through, they were saying they were going to demolish the building, but they didn't want to do that. So they came to agreement and they actually picked up the building and moved it diagonally so that it could stay in the place. Wow. Which I thought was really interesting. So they saved the building. And at any rate, so and now they have this ice cream shop that's in that building. There's parking in the back. It's really a great San Francisco story. And the ice cream is also really good, very rich.
And it's sold at many other places, right? You can get their ice cream at a lot of places.
Yeah, they definitely, yeah, they're in the city. I don't think it's like, across the country.
No,
I don't know if they do what type of distribution or anything like that. And then I just wanted to touch on some of the specialty shops because there are so many really unique shops that are here. Ying's is a fresh fish shop that's on 24th Street, very fancy, from 4-star seafood. They're a local wholesaler that supplies top restaurants in the city like
that's good to know.
Venue and Skoma's and Water Bar.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you want to, have a really fancy meal at your home that you cook, you can get, top-notch fish there.
Oysters. It sounds like you can get
Oysters,
good
crabs,
oysters.
all of that stuff. And then there's the Lovejoy's Tea Room on Church Street, which is a very kind of niche thing. It's kind of a special occasion. They do high tea, little sandwiches. And I think the woman who started it was a real estate agent.
Another real estate.
Yeah, it's a really cool place. And they have, the old vintage couch. I mean, it's very period,
Mm-hmm.
And then
Very
across,
English.
yeah, very English. They've got some clotted cream, I'm sure. And then across the street, they have kind of like a little antique shop where you can get, old tiny aprons and other various sundry things. What do they call it? Like grandma's attic or something like that. Lovejoy's attic. And then Lair's German Specialties on Church Street, I think is such a cool story. So that place was originally started and owned by Speckman, who had Speckman's, which was a German restaurant that was down in that area as well. They had, Wiener Schnitzel and all kinds of stuff.
They had a deli too.
They had a deli.
Yeah.
It was a cool spot. It was like very German. And then in 2018, something like that. I don't remember exactly when they were going. Lair's German Specialties, who was being run by Bridget Lair since the 70s. She was going to close it down, retiring. She was losing her eyesight. And anyway, a woman, Hannah Seifert, who moved here from Germany in 2016, was so distraught about the potential loss of this kind of gem of a place for German specialty goods, bought the business. And then she brought it back in 2022. So I don't know if you've been there since she reopened it.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I was looking at the website and it's very nicely done. And they really have a lot of super unique German goods. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a huge save for the neighborhood to keep that kind of cultural stuff alive. So that was pretty cool. And then there's different gift stores, Wink SF, when Modern was on 24th Street. They've got unique things. I've got my eye on the decorative sheep's head that's made out of phone books.
What?
Yeah, it's like, like you
paper cutting or something.
You put like a, head on the wall, taxidermy type thing. So it's like a fake taxidermy, but it's made out of old phone books. So someday I might buy that. Yeah, so they've got that. The wine stores, you've got Plump Jack and Noe Valley Wine and Spirits. So you can pick those up going over to a house for, a party or something like that. Very convenient. The beauty and nail salons. What are you laughing at?
I'm just laughing at the number of nail salons.
God, there's so many nail salons. Right. I don't even know how many there are. There must be at least 20, right?
There are a lot.
Because we're talking about West Portal one day, trying to count the number of nail salons. I just cannot wrap my head around how many nail salons we have in the city. Like, how often do you do nails? That would be my question.
I think I've gone once or twice in my life.
So you're not regular.
I go like once every 8 months.
Yeah, me too. It's like
I'm not keeping them in business.
I don't have enough time to go do that. I'm just curious who go there, who support all the nail salons.
Well, a lot of times you walk by them and nobody. I mean, there's nobody.
Correct.
In
right.
There.
They're empty.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Why?
Yeah,
that's a fairly cheap way of being pampered for a little bit.
Yeah, people do like it. A lot of people do get their nails done all the time.
Yes, there are people.
That is true.
They must not do much work.
Yeah, so there's beauty salons and there's yoga places. There's all kinds of different stuff. And then bars, you've got those if you want to go to those. The Dubliner near Church and 24th has been around forever. Kind of Irish tavern. They've got trivia night and things like that. Then there's the Noe Valley Tavern, which has been through many iterations. Prior to that, it was the Coyote Club. I don't know if you remember that. That was a weird thing that they did. It was like a country themed bar, and they had
What's the name of Coyote Club?
yeah. I don't know
it
if you've
should
ever
be.
seen this movie Coyote Ugly. It's
I have. It's like they jumped on the bar.
so it was very short lived. It was that after it was the Rat and Raven, which is where I worked for many years and managed there for a little.
There was a killing, at least one,
Well,
in that building too, in the bar.
well,
said it
was it, I think are you not thinking of Hans, the owner who was murdered?
No.
It's called Country Road at one point. And yeah, somebody shot somebody else, and that was, upsetting.
So that was before Finnegan's Wake?
I think it was, yeah.
Okay, so that's like you're going back to the 60s.
I remember the guy who owned Finnegan's Wake.
So,
Gino.
okay. So Hans Grolman was the owner of Rat and Raven. He also owned the Rainbow Cattle Company in Guerneville. And he lived up there. He was, the owner when I was working there. Anyways, he was murdered by someone who was working on his property. So that was a big thing. But before the Rat and Raven, it was the Noe Buddies Inn. And then Finnegan's Wake, which is where everybody got together, a group of people got together in the 70s and started up the Noe Valley Voice, which was the Noe Valley neighborhood newspaper.
Correct.
Which, if you want to look at interesting snapshot in time of Noe Valley, look up the Noe Valley Voice archives online. Very cool, because you can really get a feel for what it was like that particular month that came out.
It's impressive how long they kept it going. I saw some yesterday. Yeah.
I love the Noe Valley Voice. I read it all the time, and I have been since forever. I remember looking through the wanted ads for a job at the back of the Noe Valley Voice.
Before everything was online, you get a paper.
Yeah, I still get the paper, but
You still get.
I'm old school. I also bring the actual cashier's check to the escrow office when I buy a property. I don't wire.
You don't want to wire.
I'm very old school. So yeah, so that's not an exhaustive list by any means, but that's kind of just the things I wanted to touch on. Is there any other businesses or things like that you guys feel a burning need to mention?
I think I'm remembering a restaurant that used to be where the Boulangerie is now. I'm remembering the name. It was Wender's. I think it was Wender's. And you'd go in, and there were fairly large tables, and you'd just sit down with other people that happened to be going out to eat at the same time you did or shortly thereafter. And they'd bring you a bowl of mashed potatoes, a bowl of peas. Everything was family style. I mean, you just passed things around, and I don't remember anybody arguing about paying. But of course, we didn't have credit cards then, or if people did, it was rare, and you didn't use them in restaurants. I don't know.
Where would you use it?
Just like you didn't use them in grocery stores. You just paid cash. Everything was cash pretty much. So it was nice because you could talk to strangers. Now we have a walk in Noe Valley where you could talk to strangers on Saturdays at 10 o'clock. Everyone's welcome. And we walk about 2 miles or a mile and a half down to 30th and back and just visit with people that live in the neighborhood or their friends or family who happen by. And it's a really bonding thing to have a connection that's not just commercial.
Yeah.
About how many people would you say go on that walk?
Sometimes there might only be 12 or 15, and other times there's at least 30.
That's actually quite a few people walking together.
Well, we spread out, and Rudy comes. Rudy's 100 years old.
Wow.
And he comes, and people are very, careful with him. Because he's slower. Somebody starts ahead. He gets to start ahead of us. And we stop and take
That's great.
pictures, and at some point, we're instructed by whoever's running the show at that moment. And Chris and Tess, who are the couple that started it, they're not always there. Somebody else just takes over, and they'll say, now talk to somebody you haven't talked to.
Okay,
and everybody does. It's pretty much, I don't follow them closely, but it seems to me people turn to the next person that's near, that's not talking, to somebody else and start up a conversation.
And where do you meet? What's the starting point?
Sanchez and 24th Street.
And that's 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock on Saturday.
Every Saturday. So if anyone wants to join, that's where you should go.
By all means.
Yeah, and you can certainly ask any questions to people. I'm sure there's all kinds of people who've been there forever, people who just moved there.
Just coming, young people, older people.
Interesting.
Yeah, not many kids have come, but dogs come.
That sounds great. So in terms of like just getting around in the neighborhood, transportation, obviously you can drive and you're geographically in the center of the city. But you've also got the J Church, which takes you kind of train above ground to Church and Market, and then you go underground to downtown if you want. You have the 24 to Visadero, which is a great line that takes you all the way down to Visadero, all the way to the marina. And then in the other direction, you can go all the way to Bernal Heights and beyond. Then you have the 35 Eureka, which is kind of a shorter line that goes basically to Glen Park. And then I believe, up kind of Market area. And there's tech buses that stop throughout the neighborhood. So people who work down in the South Bay can take those, Apple Bus and things like that. You've got good freeway access off of Cesar Chavez to the 101 or down Dolores Guerrero to get on the 280 to go south. So pretty well connected in terms of transportation, I would say. And then the schools, there's various preschools in Noe Valley, and I find that they change a lot of times. I think my son went to Moldovan, which was on Sanchez and Clipper, which I think has actually moved locations now. I don't know if they have a different program there now, but I mentioned that kind of pre-K program that they have that's at Teresa Muller Early Education, which is 990 Church Street near Dolores Park. And then there's the Mission Education Center, which is for newly immigrated Spanish-speaking children.
That's public, right? I remember that being a public one. Okay.
By 30th and Noe, and to help integrate them into the school system. And then you have St. Paul's, which is the parochial kindergarten through 8th grade, which is at Church and 29th. And there's the other parochial school that's up on 24th Street.
There's another one.
It's K through 8, I believe. And
St. Philip's.
St. Philip's.
Yeah.
And they have like a fair every year. So does St. Paul's. And then you have James Lick Middle School, which takes up a full block between Noe and Castro, 25th and Clipper.
Right.
That's public. And then Alvarado Elementary School, which is at Alvarado and Douglas. So a lot of different options. I don't know if I missed anything there.
No, I think you covered all.
Yeah. And, and then the weather, of course, is a great reason why a lot of people like to live in Noe Valley on top of all the other wonderful things that we just mentioned. You've got Twin Peaks. That's the beginning of the bowl of Noe Valley. And you can always look up there and you see the fog coming over the hill. And it's still sunny where you are. And you say, those people up there on Portola are stuck in the fog, but we're in the sun.
It's true.
And
Watch the fog pour over. It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. Yeah.
Noe Valley was a great neighborhood to grow up in the 70s and 80s, and it's still a wonderful place to live today. Thanks for listening.